Well, Alfie, old boy, looks like it's another day, another dollar.
New York Tribune, 5 cents. Sorry, that was really sing-songy.
That's fine. You gotta sing all of it now.
Oh, really?
No.
Okay, I was about to say. Don't give me any ideas.
So why is it that a game set in sunny South Florida starts off in the wintry cold of New York? Well, originally in my design document I didn't have a prologue. I think my opening credits were supposed to establish that Alfie was coming down to Coral Gables from New York, and I forget how it depicted that. But the game basically started off with Alfie arriving at the train station in Miami. It wasn't until pretty far along in the design process that I decided to include the prologue. And I did that for several reasons. First of all, I wanted to kind of show the contrast and kind of give Alfie a motivation for leaving this dreary, cold winter and coming down to this more enticing tropical paradise. Also because I felt that maybe throwing the player right headfirst into this new environment of South Florida in the 20s would be a little confusing in a sense, because as I've said many times, this is not an environment that's normally portrayed in the media. New York and Chicago are more familiar environments for the 1920s, so starting off in a place that players are slightly more familiar with seemed like a better choice. Also, the title screen which you just saw was added into the game a lot later as well. I was struggling for a very long time to come up with an appropriate title screen, and one morning at 3 in the morning it just hit me. Alfie makes reference to the "It's June in Miami" billboard when he talks to Doc Dammers, but I thought it would be a more interesting opening if you could see it. And I think it sets the stage pretty well to have the snowy environment of Times Square and this one billboard shining out in the darkness to kind of call you down to South Florida. Lyle the Newsboy was not originally a character in the game. In fact, he came about because of a very silly accident on my part. Originally, there was a newspaper box in his place, and the puzzle played out the same. You still got the nickel from Suggs, and Alfie bought the newspaper, and I had done the whole animation and sound effect of him leaning over and opening the newspaper box and taking the paper out and everything. Then it was pointed out to me that newspaper boxes weren't invented until the 1940s, so I had this incredibly glaring anachronism facing me, and it was in the very first screen of the game. So I had to go back, get rid of the newspaper box, and replace it with Lyle the Newsboy, which meant a new character portrait to draw, and a new voice to cast. Luckily, it was pointed out to me right before we started casting, so it wasn't too much of a problem to get that fixed. Though not seen in this story, Carl Fisher was an important figure during the 1920s Florida land boom. He was most famous for developing Miami Beach, after having built a road called Dixie Highway which went down into Florida. Fisher was undeniably one of the biggest promoters of the Florida land boom. One of Fisher's smartest marketing moves was purchasing a large billboard in Times Square in the winter, which read, "It's June in Miami." The sight of sunny beaches against the contrast of the winter snow was probably a motivating factor for many people in New York to go down to Florida. Fisher lost most of his money in the stock market crash of 1929, and personally considered himself to be a failure. He spent the remainder of his days living in a small cottage in Miami Beach.
Hi, I'm Peter Gresser. I'm the composer for the soundtrack for Golden Wake. You might also know me as the composer of the soundtrack for
New York Tribune, 5 cents. Good morning, Mr. Banks.
Good morning, Lyle. Aren't you cold standing out here in this weather?
A little.
So, what's the news of the day?
I could tell you all of it, but then I wouldn't make any money, would I? If you want the news, buy yourself a paper. They're only a nickel.
You're a shrewd businessman, Lyle. Ever thought about going into real estate?
No, sir.
Have a good day, Lyle.
You too, Mr. Banks.
Morning, fellas. What's the good word?
Good morning, Banks.
Morning, Banks.
Horse feathers. Why is it so hot in here?
Morris apparently has a chill. He set the heating on as high as it goes this morning. Suggs and I had to prop the door open so we didn't sweat to death.
We must be raking in a fair amount this month if he can afford to do that.
I sure wish that kid outside would pipe down.
I know what you mean.
This whole prologue was heavily inspired by Glengarry Glen Ross. The whole thing about the leads and someone going in and stealing them and sort of inter-office backstabbing and things like that was very much taken from Glengarry Glen Ross. I watched the movie, I want to say about a year or so after I started with A Golden Wake, and I was really inspired by it. It amused me that there was a movie about real estate agents, and I thought, well, I might as well watch this just A, because I haven't seen it, and B, because it might be inspirational, and lo and behold, it was. It amused me, too, because I had already designed the character of Alfie Banks, and he was already in the game, but Al Pacino's character wears a suit at one point in the movie that's very, very similar to Alfie's suit. But I can assure you that is just coincidence. An interesting new experience for me in making this game was working with voice actors in person for the first time. I had done voice acting in the Ben Jordan games, but I had done that all remotely and just had people that I knew from the internet do it. This was the first time since I was working with Dave that I had the opportunity to not just work and cast with not just cast the live actors, but also work with them. So it was really interesting. We would record in Dave's apartment with his microphone, and I got to direct while Dave served as the engineer, and he would give feedback as well. And it was really just a great experience. It was really interesting to hear the people performing the lines, but it was also really good to be able to get a feel for a much more organic process, I guess. I had done some directing over Skype too, but it was something about working live with actors it's a completely different energy, and it's really cool. And on that note, I really have to give praise to Andy Schmelko, who plays Alfie Banks, because he was one of the first people. He started the whole process. We recorded everything within 1 month, and Andy was the first to come in, and we got him done in about 4 sessions over the next couple of weeks. But Andy was perfect. From the minute I heard his audition to when he came in, and he just knocked it out of the park every single time. And he really nailed the character from day one. And I mean, hire him. If you're looking for voice actors, I can't think of anyone I would rather recommend than Andy Schmelko. He is really, really amazing. Taking a page from Dave Gilbert's book of naming characters after people he doesn't like, Larry Suggs is named after a particularly mean person from my past. I don't want to name names in the off chance that this person might get wind of this game, but I had an academic advisor when I was an art major in college whose last name was Suggs, and she was not very encouraging. In fact, people used to leave her office crying a lot of the time. And she basically was the one that delivered me the news that I hadn't been accepted into the art program because my portfolio was weak and unsophisticated. So I guess I got a little bit of revenge by calling this unlikable character Suggs. Having worked on freeware titles so long, I was used to making compromises in the name of getting the game out, and one of those compromises was doing animations. This time around, since it was a commercial game, I figured I really needed to focus on getting important animations in, but also focus on getting the less than necessary flavor animations in. For example, Alfie drinking water, and several other things throughout the game. I think it's important to show rather than tell. And especially in a commercial game, you're sort of held to a higher standard than in a freeware game, so skimping out on those animations wouldn't have been as tolerated, I don't think.
Suggs,
Yeah, Banks?
how are your sales going this week?
And not so great. I had a sweet old lady yesterday who was this close to buying an apartment for her cat.
I'm sure things will pick up.
And I'm sure you'd know, being Morris's right hand and all.
Now, Suggs, that's hardly fair. You know we're all equal in here.
You're right. Forget I said anything.
How are you today, Suggs?
I can't really complain. Well, I mean, I could complain, but who would listen?
I'll just let you get back to it.
Thanks.
Got a minute, Murphy?
Sure, but I'm still on the clock.
Everything going all right with you, Murphy?
Yep, everything's copacetic. You ever going to share your good fortune with us, Banks?
What do you mean?
You always seem to manage to get the best leads. That's pretty lucky, don't you think?
I'm not sure I like what you're implying, Murphy.
Not implying, just observing. Anyway, let's drop it.
I'll let you get back to work.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, by the way, Banks, Morris wanted to see you. Said it was important.
Thanks for letting me know when I walked in, Suggs.
Hey, it's been a busy morning. It must have slipped my mind.
Good morning, Evan. Suggs said you wanted to see me?
Have a seat, Alfie.
This doesn't seem like a conversation that's going to be pleasant.
I'm afraid it isn't. You know I'm not the type to beat around the bush, so here's the long and the short of it. We're not doing well. Sales are minimal and the competition is popping up all over town like a bad rash. I hate to do it, but we're going to have to let someone go.
I see. Who did you have in mind?
That's mainly why I asked to see you, Alfie. You have more contact with Suggs and Murphy, so I think this decision should be yours.
Well, I'm kind of on the spot here, but...
The very first choice you have to make in the game is designed to make the player feel as put on the spot as Alfie does. Originally, it just started off with Suggs telling you that Morris wanted to see you, but it was suggested by the beta testers that maybe you should be able to talk to Suggs and Murphy a little bit to be able to get to know them slightly better so that this decision wasn't so uninformed.
I think Suggs should be the one let go. His sales have been the lowest consistently for the past 3 months.
Very well, if that's what you think, then I trust your judgment. Thank you for your help, Alfie. It's always appreciated.
Anything else you need?
Not at the moment. Go ahead and check the assignment board in the break room for today's leads.
Will do.
He says it's because my sales were too low. But how am I supposed to make sales if I don't get any decent leads?
I hear you. It hasn't been very easy for me either.
And just because Golden Boy gets all the good leads, it doesn't mean...
Shut your trap, somebody's coming.
Gentlemen,
Hello, Banks. Your meeting with Morris go well?
I would say so, yes.
Great to hear. Well, Murphy and I better get back to work.
Time to make some magic. Operator, connect me to the Stamford residence in Bensonhurst, if you would, please. Hello, is this Ms. Irene Stamford? Yes, hello, this is Alfred Banks calling from Morris & Banks. I just wanted to follow up on the deposit you put down in the apartment in Flatbush. No, thank you very much, Mr. Contis. A pleasure doing business with you. 5 sales in 30 minutes. I think that might be a new record.
Alfie, can you come here a moment?
What is it, Evan?
I'm running late for the weekly shareholders meeting. Could you lock up my office for me?
Of course.
Here's the key. I'll be back shortly.
What on earth was that?
That sounds like Murphy took a spill in there.
Originally, the game wouldn't let you lock Morris's office door until after you went into the break room to see what was going on. This made it a lot easier to establish that Alfie had been distracted and Suggs or Murphy had gone into the office to steal the leads. But several people asked why they weren't allowed to lock the door, and I figured they had a point. There's nothing more frustrating than being told you can't do something in an adventure game, so I just had to come up with a workaround, and now you can lock the door. But the idea is that if you do lock the door, Murphy or Suggs picks your pocket just as you're going into the break room and then gives you back the key afterwards. But the problem with this became when to tell the player, because if the player saw a close-up of the hand going in the pocket, as I considered doing, then they would know that the key had been stolen before Alfie did, which presented the problem of the player having information that the character didn't, and therefore would make them want to go back outside or just not being too aware. So I made it a little bit more subtle if the player locks the door beforehand.
Hey, give me a shout if you need any help in there.
Murphy, what's going on?
Just being a damn clumsy fool. Don't worry about me. I was trying to change the light bulb and I lost my balance.
Here, let me help you clean up.
Thanks for the help, Banks. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to get back to work.
That was a bit odd.
Hey, Banks, I had a question about this client.
I'm back, Alfie. Got my key?
Yes, Evan, it's right. Odd. I thought I'd put it in my other pocket. Anyway, here you are.
Alfie,
Yes?
where are tomorrow?
I beg your pardon?
The leads for tomorrow? The ones that were on my... They're no longer on... Where have they gone?
I have no idea. I haven't been in your office since the...
You know I trust you one... But this is a very...
I'm aware of it. Look, I'll get Suggs and Murphy together and we'll look for them.
Or maybe we could just skip the drama if you look under Banks's hat, sir.
What?
We both saw you, Banks.
Coming clean will...
Is what they're saying...
What? No, I have no...
Then you won't mind just to be...
See for yourself.
Alfie...
It was obviously Suggs and Murphy. They've set me up.
Really, Banks? That's low.
You're one to talk about low. How can you even look me in the eye?
Now, Alfie, I know you're upset.
It is if they're the ones at fault.
Alfie, look at it from my... The leads were in my office when I left. You were the only one with the key, and now they... What would you do in my shoe?
So does this mean I've been canned?
I hate to do this, Alfie, but for now, I think you should take an in-depth...
Fine. I guess I'll see you fellas around.
Hey, no hard feelings. See? They ain't even wooden.
Taking an early lunch, miss?
No, Sure, just...
Well, if you need anything to read while you eat, I still... Riots in Vienna! Read all about it! Newspapers...
Don't suppose the news of the day can be any worse than the morning I've had. Let me have a paper, please.
That'll be a nickel.
Thanks, lad. Murder, extortion, robbery, par for the course in this city. What's this? Merrick making waves in Florida? Miami, eh? But I'll be damned if I'm just gonna roll over and freeze to death up here. When I'm finished down there, the name Banks will finally mean something again. So, Mr. Merrick, let's just see what you've got to offer.
One challenge of having a game set over a period of 14 years was how to portray time jumps in a convincing and not too jarring way. I figured the solution to this was to have newspaper headlines every now and then in the middle of chapters and sometimes at the end of chapters to kind of give you an idea of what was happening in the interim. Also, you may notice that George Merrick looks slightly different in the newspaper photograph. That's because that's his old character portrait, and I never went back and changed it. You'll also notice towards the end of the game when Alfie finds the poster for re-electing Jeremiah Miller, his old portrait's on that too. So there's a slight remnant of the old style of portraits in the game.
Hello, Miami. Alfie Banks. Huzzah! Oh, horse feathers. This humidity is something else. Right. I've got my luggage claim ticket. Now I just need to find this Hotel Belmont and...
Hey there! Hello!
Are you speaking to me, sir?
You see anybody else around, son? Come on over here and have a chat with old Doc Dammers, why don't you?
When I started designing this game, there were a few things that stuck out in my mind as far as set pieces or images that I really wanted to have in the game. I'll talk about some of those later on as we encounter them, but one of the very first things that came to mind was what happens when Alfie gets off the train. He's just arrived to South Florida, he's gotten off the train, what has to happen that's interesting? And nothing seemed more appropriate than to meet Doc Dammers. Back when I was first starting the design document, I got my friend Ryan Keepens to do a few concept sketches for me, and he did this great sketch of Doc Dammers standing in front of this big wagon that said, "Real Estate, Doc Dammers, a name you can trust." It was very carnival barker. It looked very much like a carnival barker in front of his stand. So I took inspiration for that and painted the wagon into the scene and had Doc Dammers in front of it. And I thought, what better contrast to start the game, really, than Alfie gets off the train, meets this guy, thinks he's just some sort of, 2-bit snake oil salesman, as he calls him, and then this guy ends up becoming the first mayor of Coral Gables. So I thought that establishing him as the first character you meet in this crazy new environment was a very important thing. Also, when I wrote Doc Dammers, I had Abe Goldfarb in mind from day one, so I'm really happy that he agreed to do it, and I thought he performed exceptionally and did a great job of bringing this character to life.
Are you deaf there, son? I said I wanted to have a chat.
May I help you with something?
Pardon me for saying so, my boy, but I believe I'm the one who can offer you the help.
I'm really not interested in buying anything, sir.
Of course you aren't. Did you think I just fell off the turnip truck? I can tell a fellow salesman a mile away. You're here to get a piece of the action, aren't you?
Yes, I suppose I am.
Then consider this your own little welcoming committee. What did you say your name was?
I didn't. It's Banks. Alfred Banks.
Well then, welcome to Miami, Alfred Banks. By your complexion, I'm guessing you come from up north.
Yes, New York, actually.
Hell of a town, but you'll find we do things a bit differently down here. If you got any questions, feel free to ask.
What's the current market like down here? I've heard quite a few things back in New York.
People are buying left and right. It's a great time to be in real estate, plenty of dough to be made. Every day, more and more locals and tourists come looking for their own spot of land, and we're here to sell. Mark my words, Banks, we're on the verge of something great.
I'm interested in this Coral Gables development I've heard about.
Oh, straight to the top, eh? They call it Miami's master suburb. It's been meticulously planned and is ready to start construction at any moment. Lots are going faster than a Tin Lizzie downhill. If you want to get involved there, you're going to need to talk to the man in charge, George Merrick.
Where can I find George Merrick?
He's got a sales office downtown, right on Flagler Street. Look for the building made of coral rock next to the Stocks and Bonds office. You can't miss it. Of course, George is incredibly busy these days and doesn't talk to just anyone.
Maybe not, but he'll talk to me.
I like your spirit, kid. You'll get places thinking like that.
How long have you been in this business?
Probably longer than you've been alive, son. Before this opportunity opened up, I was selling lots on Miami Beach for Carl Fisher himself. Surely you saw his billboard in Times Square.
You mean It's June in Miami? Of course, everyone saw that. It's partly what inspired me to come down here.
Glad to hear it. That's a perfect example of good marketing and knowing your audience. Why do you think I'm out here by the train station? New arrivals are the easiest to sell to. There's a free piece of advice for you, Banks.
I appreciate the information, Mr. Dammers, but I'm afraid I must be going.
Of course, eager to get started, I understand. And believe me, there'll be plenty to do very soon.
It was a pleasure to have met you. Maybe I'll see you around town.
I can more or less guarantee that, my boy. This is so much easier than Joey. I just get to be a character instead of like, yeah, that's a door. It's pretty much a set of stairs there. Straight to the top, eh? That's terrible. Let me say it again. All right.
This building where Alfie first emerges off the train is the downtown Miami stop for the Florida East Coast Railroad. The Florida East Coast Railroad, as the name would imply, is a railroad line that runs all the way down the eastern coast of Florida from St. Augustine to Key West. It was developed by Henry Flagler, who I'll talk about a little bit more in depth later. This building, as it's seen here, no longer exists. It was demolished in 1963. The building was located in the area of Northwest 3rd Street and 1st Avenue in downtown Miami, which currently is the location of the Government Center station of the Miami Metro Rail. That's the elevated subway line which goes across parts of Miami. So at least the area was kept somewhat consistent. I have to give credit where credit is due, in this case to Stephen Polton, who helped me out with a couple of coding things. One of them is the reflection of the sunlight on the water, which you're seeing here on this map screen. The other is his code for having clocks work in real time, which he wrote for me for Ben Jordan 8, and I just copied over into this game. So thanks, Stephen. One of the issues I ran into in designing a game like this was ambition and scope getting the better of me and having to decide what to cut and what to include. This was especially true with the inclusion of landmarks in the game. I knew that I wanted to have a lot of historical locations that Alfie could visit, but the problem with adventure games is that a lot of the times you go to the interiors of places, and there's not really much room to have a background that just exclusively showcases the exterior of a place. So there were a few landmarks that I wish I could have included, but couldn't really find a place for. For example, the Alhambra Water Tower, which is a very nice tower that resembles a lighthouse in Coral Gables, as well as the entrance to Country Club Prado, which is a very nice stone archway with a fountain and plaza. Early on I had the idea, and probably a little bit too influenced by L.A. Noire, to have a driving simulator in the game, where when you got the company car you could actually drive around Coral Gables. I'm not sure how I was going to implement that, but probably some sort of behind the car sort of 2D racing faux 3D thing. In any case, the idea was that you could drive around Coral Gables and visit the landmarks and get little landmark bonuses and things like that, but that idea was quickly scrapped because I realized it would add absolutely nothing to the game whatsoever. So I had to make some compromises, but I don't think the game is any worse off for not including that sort of thing.
Hello, and welcome to the Hotel Belmont.
Excuse me.
How may I help you, sir?
I'd like to check in, please. My reservation was made under Banks, Alfred.
One moment, please. Yes, here you are. Your room will be the second door to your right when you get to the top of the stairs. Oh, someone was here earlier from the train station to deliver your luggage. It's been placed in your room. I'll just take that claim ticket off your hands for you.
Thank you very much.
Not a problem, sir. Please, let me know if I can assist you with anything else.
Is there anything you can tell an out-of-towner about this city?
Certainly. It's been growing at an alarming rate, especially in the past few years. There's no denying we're at the start of a land boom. I hear tell this new Coral Gables development is going to bring in thousands more people as well. At this pace, we could be the next Manhattan by 25.
Thank you for your assistance, my good man.
Happy to help.
Originally, when you clicked on the Flagler Street icon on the map, you would start off at the other end of the street. But this was changed fairly early on after I sent an early build to a couple of people just to check it out. I don't really remember what the decision was behind doing it that way originally, but it was a much better idea to change it because the idea was that you really need to go to the hotel first. I guess I put it in because I wanted the player to see the Coral Gables sales office and go there first, and sort of realize that they needed to get the typewriter ribbon for the secretary. But it just felt more natural to be able to go to the hotel first, check in, and then sort of explore your surroundings and see.
Hello, sir. Let me know if I can be of assistance.
This distinguished gentleman in the painting is none other than Henry Flagler, also known as the Father of Miami, because he basically brought his railroads all the way down the state of Florida and brought in a new breath of life to the swamps. Flagler was born in 1830 and was pretty much a businessman from the start. In fact, in 1870, he got together with John D. Rockefeller to found Standard Oil, which was one of the biggest oil companies in the United States. Flagler and his wife Mary went down to Jacksonville, Florida in 1878 because she was sick and her doctor advised her to go down there for the weather for her health. Unfortunately, she died, and she pretty much left Flagler alone to raise a son. He got remarried and 2 years later went to St. Augustine, where he noticed that there wasn't really much going on. And being an opportunist, he figured that there would be a big potential for tourism, so he decided to start building a hotel and a railroad system. And when that was a success, he decided to go further south and started building hotels and railroads all the way down to Biscayne Bay, where he ended up in 1896. At that point, Flagler's hotels and railroads were so popular that tons of people were coming to the area, and so he decided to expand all the way down to Key West. Meanwhile, the town that had sprung up around Biscayne Bay was so impressed with Flagler's work that they decided they wanted to call themselves Flagler after him. But he declined and suggested that the town name itself after the river, which in turn had a name taken from a Native American tribe, the Miami.
Excuse me.
What can I do for you?
What sort of records do you keep in this office?
All kinds. Marriage licenses, death certificates, property titles, you name it.
How far back do they go?
Not too far back, 30 years or so. The city wasn't officially incorporated until 1896, but I have some records going back to 1891. You let me know if there's anything you need to look up.
Have you always lived in Miami?
Nah, I moved down here from Philly after the war. Nice place. Can't beat the climate, that's for sure.
Could I look something up?
Of course. What do you need?
Thank you for your...
Anytime.
The typewriter ribbon puzzle is a bit simple, but it's an excellent example of having a puzzle there to guarantee that the player does things in the correct order. Really, one of the only reasons I put it in was because I needed the player to check into the hotel and make sure that they had checked into the hotel by the time that they completed the land auction. Because if it hadn't been in there, you could have just gone to see the secretary, found out about the land auction, solved the puzzle, and then gone back to your hotel. And it wouldn't have made sense for you to have a message at your hotel if you hadn't checked in yet. So really, you needed to check in to be able to access your suitcase, to be able to get the typewriter ribbon, etc., etc. So it is a bit simple. It's not a huge leap of the imagination, but it makes sense in context, and it definitely needs to be there.
Pardon me, miss.
I'm terribly sorry, sir, but I'm just too busy for you right now. Perhaps you could come back another time?
Another time? I've just come all the way from New York. Surely there's something a lovely young lady like you can do to help out a man in need?
Look, Buster, I've heard it all before. Like I said, I haven't got time for you at this moment.
What seems to be the trouble?
Well, not that you'd care, but I need to get these letters written. And seeing as the weekly shipment of supplies has been delayed, I'm forced to do them by hand.
You seem very dedicated to your job. I can appreciate that.
I am, yes. Mainly because I want to keep it. Now, unless you want to come back here and pick up a pen, I really need to get back to my work.
A tempting offer, but I'll have to decline. I'll be back later. Pardon me, miss. Would this typewriter ribbon be of any use to you?
It certainly would. Mine wore out yesterday, and I ordered a replacement, but it hasn't come in yet. Thank you, sir. I greatly appreciate it. This will cut my work time by half at least.
My pleasure. Happy to help. Pardon me, miss.
What may I do?
I'd like to see Mr. George Merrick.
Take a number. Mr. Merrick is in very high... I'm afraid he's not currently...
Would it be possible to make an appointment?
Certainly. Let me see. Our next available appointment is... next August.
When we were recording the dialogue for the secretary, Dave asked me, "Why is she saying every single month?" And when I told him the reason, he said, "No one is ever going to get that. So I'm pointing it out here, just so you do." When the secretary tells you when she has her next available appointment, it'll always calculate 4 months ahead of the current date. It was a completely useless touch, but I thought it was fun because they did something similar in The Curse of Monkey Island, and I thought I might as well put something in like that too.
What? That's preposterous.
Mr. Merrick is a very busy man.
I think you've made that quite clear. Come now. I helped you out with your typewriter. Now you're just gonna hi-hat me? I don't know how things work down here, but where I'm from, one good turn usually deserves another.
Okay. Keep your shirt on. I'll level with you. I'm not going to be able to get you an appointment. But I can tell you that Mr. Merrick keeps an eye out for fresh talent. If you can manage to do something to impress him, he may see you without an appointment.
I see. What would you suggest?
Well, I'm not sure, but you might be able to get something done at today's land auction.
A land auction, you say? Where and when?
It's set to start this afternoon, around 2 o'clock. You'll find it at the corner of Granada Avenue and Coral Way.
Fantastic. I'll head over there right away.
Good luck.
Have you got any pertinent information on...
None I'm allowed to divulge, sir.
I'll let you get back to your work.
Thank you, sir.
Sold! You've made your husband a very happy man, miss.
In elementary school, I always enjoyed those logic puzzles where you had a grid and you had to sort of figure out who had what color socks and who ate breakfast at this time and things like that. And I thought it would be an interesting thing to try and add into an adventure game, because at its heart it is pretty adventure gamey if you think about it. So I wanted to have this house matching puzzle. And originally it was the only puzzle available at the land auction, but it was very divisive. Half the people who tried it out thought it was very simple and got through it easily. The other half thought it was too difficult or that the hints weren't good enough. And it was, quite frankly, very difficult to get that balance right, because there were certain hints in those puzzles that it seemed like there was always one hint that was very obscure, where you had to kind of think outside of the box or think laterally to get the right solution. And I wanted to include that and not make it super easy, since this was already supposed to be a sort of tough puzzle. So the solution I came up with was just making the puzzle optional. So now you can either play the logic puzzle or you can do the persuasion puzzle. And a few of the testers asked me why it was optional, but I know that in the long run, if I had made it a requirement, a lot more people would probably have gotten frustrated and quit during that puzzle than the ones who would have enjoyed it and solved it. So it's up to you. There's reason to come back and play it again if you want to choose a different one at some other time. Since I was designing a game in which the protagonist was a real estate agent, I knew that I wanted to have some variety in puzzles, and I knew that a real estate agent would be good at dialogue, so I wanted to mix up the dialogue puzzles a little bit. Out of this spawned the whole persuasion mechanic. At first, at the land auction, I wanted to have 3 different types of persuasion, one being just a standard easy dialogue puzzle, another one being a sort of sudden death thing where you had to go against a timer and have some sort of persuasion meter or something like that, and also a logic puzzle, which ended up becoming the optional logic puzzle at the land auction. But then I played Deus Ex Human Revolution, and I saw what they did with their dialogue puzzles, where you had an augmentation which told you what the character's personality was, or signs to look for, things like that, as well as L.A. Noire, which emphasized reading people's facial expressions to tell whether they were lying or not. So I sort of cherry-picked elements from these things and boiled them down to their most basic forms, and made what basically amounted to a fancy dialogue puzzle, but with enough mechanics to make it seem a little bit more interesting. Thus, the persuasion puzzle. Not much is known about Edward Dammer's life before he entered sales, but his nickname Doc comes from the fact that he was a doctor, although a doctor in what is not quite clear. One thing is for certain, however, and that is that he was very good at his job. He reportedly sold $1.4 million worth of property in just one day. They used to say that he was able to sell ice skates in Hawaii. Doc used to liven up his land auctions by offering prizes to people who bought land, including china and other knickknacks. Dammers worked for Carl Fisher in Miami Beach before joining the Coral Gables project as sales director. He already had a reputation as a master salesman at that time, so he was a pretty hot commodity for George Merrick's project. So you may be asking yourself, what exactly was this whole land boom all about anyway? Well, it was Florida's first real estate bubble, which basically meant that land was being sold at ridiculously low prices in such high volume that the market became saturated and eventually the value went down dramatically. By the 1920s, Miami had been around as a city for about 30 years, and South Florida had gained a reputation as a tropical paradise. So naturally, outside developers came down to Florida and tried to make their profit by selling the land to people all over the United States. The prices started going up based on speculation, and people went a little bit overboard, as is wont to happen with these sorts of things. Unfortunately, like any bubble, it's so called because it's a fragile thing that's going to pop at any moment. And in 1925, people started realizing that the high prices of land were based more on the idea of finding customers rather than the actual value of the land. So the cracks started showing in the glitzy facade of South Florida, and the land boom ended. There were a couple of other factors that contributed to the land boom's end, but we'll get into those later on.
Any bids for 200? 200! Come on, folks, it's a beautiful day to buy some land.
Well, well, fancy seeing you here.
Thanks. What brings you to my humble little land auction?
I'm trying to see Mr. Merrick, but it's proving a bit more difficult than I'd anticipated.
Don't say old Doc didn't warn you, son. Anyway, I'd love to chat, but I'm a bit tied up at the moment.
Is there anything I can do to help?
Actually, there is. See those two sets of stragglers over there, separate from the crowd? They're all about a hair's breadth away from buying, but I just can't get them to budge. Take your pick. If you can convince either set to buy some houses, I just might put in a good word for you back at the sales office. The fellow by himself there seems like he won't take too much effort to convince. If you want a real challenge, you might try the crowd of 5 there.
I'll see what I can do.
Attaboy. Oh, one more thing before you get started. I know you've got experience in this business, but I want to talk to you about seller intuition. From time to time, you might find yourself needing to persuade someone. You know as well as I do that that's all about finding a person's weakness and bending it to your whim. When you're talking to them, you can use seller intuition to your advantage. It'll give you a clearer read on people and let you figure out what you should play to in order to get them to see things your way. But enough yammering from me. Go and do what you have to do.
Seller intuition was a mechanic that I struggled with for quite a while. Originally, it was a set of points, and it was a limited well of points that you could get. You would use your seller intuition not just for the persuasion puzzles, but to bypass other puzzles in the game. For instance, at the marina, you could use seller intuition to bluff your way past the guard. You could use your seller intuition to talk your way, or not have to bribe the clerk at the Biltmore Hotel. And it always served as a sort of get-out-of-jail-free card. And on paper, it sounded a lot better than it actually worked in-game. Because the problem was that there were ways to earn the seller intuition points, but it wasn't very clear how you had to do that. I remember one of the ways was looking at all the paintings in George Merrick's office. Another way was to actually, the arcade puzzle, quote-unquote, at the air show was optional, and if you decided to do it and complete it, then you would get another seller intuition point. But it was very vague as to how you could get them, and it just didn't work. So at the suggestion of Vince 12, I made seller intuition an always available thing, which would just highlight details about the person and provide a personality analysis to give you a better idea of what the person's personality was, and that way you could solve the puzzle easier.
Pardon me, sir. I wonder if I could have a moment of your time.
What can I do for you, Mac?
The name's Alfred Banks, and I think I'm the one that can do something for you. I hear you're in the market to buy a lot.
It's true. I've heard plenty about this Coral Gables development, but I've got some reservations.
Let's have a chat then. I'm sure I can assuage all your concerns.
Okay. I have to admit, I'm not exactly the researching type. Fact is, I'm just going by what I've been told. I've noticed that they're not just selling houses, but also lots. What good is a patch of dirt to me anyway?
You have to think of it as a long-term investment. You buy the land, build a house, and over time, the value of both increase. You stand to make a profit.
I'm not really interested in all those numbers. Leave that business to the accountants. I just want a place to live. Everybody keeps going on about the area, but what's so great about it?
From what I've seen, you'll have everything at your doorstep. You won't need to travel very far to get what you need.
Well now, that's definitely an advantage. If there's one thing I despised about my home up north, it was having to walk everywhere in the cold. One thing I don't understand, though. Why is the land being sold at an auction? It seems a bit shady, to be honest.
It makes things more exciting, don't you agree? It sure beats just going into an office and signing paperwork.
Exciting? You call standing out here in the blazing sun being pressured to buy land exciting? To be frank, I think I'd prefer going into an office. At least it wouldn't give me excess acid. Now be honest with me. All this seems a bit too good to be true. There has to be something that isn't right about all this.
Not at all. Everything is absolutely perfect.
Oh, what a load of horse feathers. Nothing is perfect. I know Merrick isn't building utopia.
So what do you say? Do we have a deal?
Not a chance.
How about this? Pleasure to meet you, fine people. My name is Banks, Alfred Banks. You can call me Alfie. I don't know if any of you have come from the Northeast, but the train ride down is certainly something else. Right then, folks. How about we make some sales?
Sold! You've made your husband a very happy man, miss.